All right, got my cup of coffee. I am smelling lots and lots of peach rings, like peach candy, dried apricots, like a little bit of vanilla, and this coffee is very, 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 very cool. Today's video, I wanted to talk about my meditation technique. I've had a few friends ask me, how do I meditate? What does it look like when I sit down? What am I actually going through in my head, and how am I kind of working through my meditation? So I thought I'd share a little bit about that practice. Now, this is by no means the right way. It's a combination of the things that I've learned along the way over the last 7 or 8 years meditating, the ideas that have stuck with me and have helped me kind of connect with the present moment during my meditation. And so it's a hodgepodge. It literally is like a mutt of a bunch of different things and practices all rolled into one. I practice for 30 minutes every day. And this 30-minute session is broken down into a few different chapters. And that's what I thought I'd talk a bit about. So first of all, you can skip ahead and just kind of jump to the section where I break it down. There's going to be a little link in the description to help you get to the timestamp to jump ahead there. So if you just want to kind of skip ahead against the preamble, feel free to go there. But in the meantime, I'm going to talk a bit about how my practice evolved to get to this place. And then I'm going to actually do a guided meditation, a 30-minute guided meditation that I'll upload, and I will post it here on the upper right-hand side of your screen. So when it's ready, it will be there. If it's not there yet, you won't find a link yet. But I'm going to create a practice that actually walks through this meditation in real time. So how did all of this start? Well, I first started with meditation apps. I started using Headspace, which was the recommendation of a friend of mine, Flores, I think. And with Headspace, I started on the free app for a little bit. And I think I got to a 3-minute and 5-minute video. And then I maybe did a 10-minute meditation that was guided. And I did that for quite a while. So I do recommend guided meditations as a good starting point. An app like Headspace, Calm, Insight Timer, these all have a bunch of guided meditations. YouTube has a bunch of cool guided meditations. There's no real wrong way in. But I find that it can just be overwhelming and weird to just sit there and try to meditate. You don't know what to do. So a guided meditation just gives you kind of some instructions and some signposts along the way. And at least for me, it was very, very helpful. And I find that most beginners also find that just helpful to just be guided along. And I think 10 minutes is probably totally fine, 5 or 10 minutes to start with, because jumping right into 30 minutes would have been weird for me. I would not have been ready to do it. And 30 minutes took time for me to get to a place where I felt like that was appropriate. But if you're ready to dive in and you're very gung-ho and very adventurous, and also you feel like you've got this and you want to try it, feel free to go for it. But you will probably find what I found is that it's very boring. So that's the truth is, meditation for me, at least at the very beginning, was just incredibly boring. I would sit down and I would follow my breath and follow these instructions. And especially when I got off of guided meditation and started doing it by myself, I just found myself getting very, very sleepy and very bored, just waiting for the time to end. And I think that's normal. I've had other friends say it's very interesting or very uncomfortable. Instead of being boring, it's actually just physical discomfort. It just feels like anxiety is building in the body. You're getting kind of really nervous and stressed, and your mind is racing. You might find different things. For me, I found it just very, very boring. But at some point, there will be this sort of opening, and that will be the first clue, the aha, that there's something to this. For me, I remember the opening for the first time happening while I was sitting doing a sound meditation. I think I was there was a meditation group here in LA, and I had just started sort of dabbling with doing this with other people, as opposed, migrating from the apps. And maybe this wasn't my first experience, but I remember it being the most salient was at this meditation. It was a sound meditation where we were just asked to listen to all the sounds that were coming into our ears and into our senses. And when I did that, I just realized that for a second I was hearing, maybe it was a minute or something, I was hearing all these sounds come to me, but I realized that I hadn't been thinking at all. I was just experiencing the sounds. And that was this sort of this epiphany type of aha moment where I got to experience the moment and the sensations and the things that are happening outside in the world without my mind creating this sort of definition. I am hearing a car, I am hearing a bird, I am hearing a tree. All of a sudden, the mind and the thinking was gone for a second, and I was just experiencing the moment. And I think that was the opening that was like, oh my God, there's something here. And I've heard from other people that they get these glimpses of these moments. They feel almost like peace. Like you experience the mind settling so much that you just experience the raw moment. A sound, a sight, a taste. You know, you're in awe of nature, and all of a sudden there's this break, and then that happens enough times that you realize, okay, there's something to it, and I want to get my mind back there, and I want to experience truth. I want to experience the present moment. So for me, that opening gave me this sense of like there's this deeper meaning and this deeper truth, and that's kind of what gave me the motivation to stick with meditation. The best metaphor I've heard for this is like our mind is like a snow globe. It's shaken up, it's very cloudy, there's these swirls of snow flying around, and when you meditate and you sit long enough and you experience the clarity of moment, what's happening is that snow is just gently and slowly settling down to the point where the thoughts have just sort of settled, and now you have clarity. And now you can see what's really going on. And that is what I experienced with meditation. And that's what I experienced as I've sat longer and longer and through this technique that I'll talk about. Is it's a way of helping the mind settle a bit. So I'm going to move on to talking about the types of different practices that there are. And then again, this will stair step into how I got to my current practice. So there's this Western tradition called Vipassana training or insight meditation. And this is sort of this idea of following an anchor. And this is where I started, and this is where I think Headspace and Calm and most of these apps will start you with, is you sit down and you experience sort of the sensation of maybe your body making contact with the floor, with the chair. You can follow the anchor of your breath. You can feel your breath kind of inhaling and exhaling. You can feel the physical sensation there. It can be anything, really, this idea of following an anchor. And then through insight meditation, you start to become mindful of when you're able to notice that your mind is thinking or feeling. So if you have a thought come up, you can label that thought as thinking. Or you have a big, strong emotion surges up while you're sitting and you say, ooh, feeling. That's emotion, feeling. So you're starting almost like labeling things. You're labeling and making contact. You're just sort of being mindful of what you're experiencing and what's coming through your mind. So that's Vipassana or insight or Western meditation practice. There are other practices like mantra-based practices, so transcendental meditation or TM. I believe, I have not done it myself, but I believe that's mantra-based. So you're given a mantra and you just chant and repeat that, and the mantra becomes the anchor that helps the snow globe settle and becomes the way of getting deeper. There's also Zen tradition, which is how I trained a little bit later, and the Zen tradition is this beginner's mind, or this don't know mind, which is almost like clearing your mind and truly starting to experience the world without thinking, without thought. And you touch into that beginner's mind, and there are techniques to get there. And so there are other practices too. There are what's called metta practices, or loving kindness meditation practices, where you give yourself loving kindness and speak to yourself with kindness and provide the kind of loving kindness that helps you grow and helps you feel nurtured. There are Kundalini yoga type practices, or a lot of breath work practices. So there's a number of practices. And again, I mentioned that to you that how I practice and how I meditate is sort of a combination. It's a hodgepodge of all these different things. So let me say that I started with the apps. I started going to a meditation group here called Insight LA. And I started doing 10-minute sessions and eventually 20-minute sessions where really I was just focused on following the breath. And I think that's a great way to begin. And I actually think at the end of the day, that's probably one of the most helpful ways to reduce stress, to connect with the present moment, and to move on. I don't think there needs to be much more depth than that. So I then moved on to trying to connect with things other than just the breath. I remember I listened to a Pema Chodron meditation where she did a full body scan, and being able to embody your sensations and being able to sense things through your skin and sense how you carry different emotions or different feelings in your body. And that scan became something that I incorporated to kind of just move away from the breath and into other parts of the body. But what I found in just doing that technique for a number of years, I found it like I felt like it was lacking a little bit of depth for me. I was so excited by Buddhism and the philosophies and getting a little bit deeper spiritually. And so I wanted to knock on those doors a little more. And I found that the practice of just following the breath or just feeling the physical sensations of the body left me feeling like there was something more. There was a deeper question that I wanted answered. During COVID, actually, I was reading a book, another Jack Kornfield book, I believe, and he mentioned metta practice. He's mentioning, again, this thing I've talked about, loving kindness. And he challenged the reader to try a year of loving kindness meditation. So I decided, it was April of 2020, I decided I'm going to do a year of loving kindness meditation. So every day that I'm meditating, I'm going to try to wish good things for myself and send myself some loving kindness. And I just decided I actually have just kept that in my practice since then. So I've been doing that it'll be coming on 3 years now. And I will say that was probably one of the most uncomfortable meditations for me to begin, having been totally fine with following the breath, scanning the body, being really nice to myself and saying really nice things to myself. Just felt weird. Maybe it's a very Western thing that it felt strange to say, may I be happy and healthy, may I be safe and protected. And I'll walk through what those phrases are that I say to myself, but it just felt odd. It felt like something I definitely wasn't used to doing. So I incorporated a little bit of loving kindness. So I added Vipassana, which was sort of following the breath and touching with the sensations. I did a body scan based on what Pema Chodron had sort of talked about. I incorporated this Jack Kornfield metta loving kindness element. And then when I got back to Los Angeles, right in the midst of COVID, actually, I came back, I met with my Zen teacher, Tim Callahan, who I've mentioned before, and he recommended two things. One was extending my meditation from 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and he mentioned that really just helps the snow globe, again, helps the snow sort of settle that much more, that extra 10 minutes, which I have found is totally true. Not sure why, but when you stick with a meditation that long, for some reason, it's that little bit extra that helps the mind settle that much more. So I incorporated a longer meditation. But then I also incorporated this Zen mind, or this beginner's mind, this don't know mind, specific to Tim's lineage. And what this is asking a question, whatever you're sensing, whatever you're feeling, whatever's sort of coming up. You have this very curious mind, and I emphasize this at the end of my meditation, where you ask, what is this? So with 3 breaths, you say, what is this? Sort of a 3-breath question. And then out you exhale, don't know. And this is a deep not knowing, a deep don't know. This isn't, to quote or to paraphrase Tim, this isn't a don't know like, I don't know the answer to that. Let me go look it up on Google or ask ChatGPT. When you ask, what is this? What is this light? What is this reflection? What is this belief, this faith that I have? What is this? Don't know. The don't know is very deep. In fact, it's sort of tied to the koan lineage and tradition of Zen. As an example, I have a question here that I wrote down as a note. I think Tim asked this very question, the type of question like, what did your face look like before your mother was born? What did your face look like before your mother was born? Don't know. And that don't know is a type of don't know that is unanswerable. It is larger. It is galactic in nature and scale. It is universally large and unknowable. And that unknowability, this idea of an answer or a question that has no answer, is exactly the type of paradox that you're sort of tapping into. And that's the level of don't know mind. And that opens up this very expansive mind. And when I had that hunch, that itch that I talked about, where I was looking for something deeper in my practice beyond just scanning the body and sensing, it was that don't know that I was really searching for. Eckhart Tolle calls it connecting to the source. And even Judaism has this idea of God being an unspeakable, unwritable term, because it's so large that it's not definable. And so there's this unpronounceable symbol in the Bible which represents God, because it represents the totality of God, but it's sort of unspeakable. And this is the same exact thing that Zen is pointing to when it says don't know. It's that large and that big. So I created this mutt practice. It's a 30-minute practice that combines all of these things that I just talked about. And that's where I'll break down the technique. So if you're just joining now and you're just sort of skipping ahead to this part of the technique, welcome. And if you have already been following along, let me break down how this 30-minute sit session works. And then, like I said, I'll record a full, real-time 30-minute meditation on the channel too that you can follow along. And again, it's a little, maybe not advanced, but it's a little bit long if you're just getting started in meditation, but hopefully it's helpful to you guys. So I start by sitting down in a comfortable seat. I turn my phone off, of course, and I turn off all distractions, and I sit comfortably. I sit in a chair. I also have a little kneeling bench that I use upstairs, a little stool sort of thing that I can sit on and meditate on. It doesn't really matter. You could be on the floor, you can be cross-legged, you could be laying down if you want to, as long as you're not going to completely fall asleep. You want to be alert. But sit, and I start with feeling the points of contact with the floor and with the chair, sort of feeling the weight of my body. I'm trying to sort of tap into a sense of gravity. So where I feel it the most, at least for myself, is I feel it on the bottom of my feet as it makes contact with the floor. I feel sort of some of the fuzziness and the warmth inside of my socks. I'll feel my palms. I'm feeling almost two things. My palms are on my knees, but I can feel that my knees have something pressing down on them, my hands. And I can feel that my palms also have something in them, my knees, and they're pressing down. And I can feel that sensation. So I'm not trying to overanalyze. I'm just sort of tapping into that feeling. And I can feel my bum on the chair. I can feel the sensation of what that feels like. Again, pressing down. I can feel the sides of my arms along the side of my body. And so that's the first moment, the first chapter of my meditation is just feeling the physical contact and feeling the sense of gravity and feeling the points of contact. I then, from there, shift to my five senses. So I start to focus on things like sounds and smells and tastes and the sights. But I'm ideally not trying to think about what I'm seeing. So I'm gonna slow down and give you an example. I'm looking now at the camera lens, and I can see the lens and the circle and the glass and the reflection. And what I'm doing there is I'm defining everything that I'm seeing. What I try to do is to really just stare when I'm talking about sight. And what I am seeing here, and I'm trying to explain this to you, is just a highlight. I see a big glimmer and a gleam, like a highlight along the lens, and I see an interesting reflection. But I'm also seeing colors on the back of my phone case here, and I'm experiencing some light outside. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to allow these senses, these sights, to come toward me, but not have my mind process what I am seeing, just let them come to me. The same thing happens with sounds. You might have sounds coming toward you. You're not like trying to search for them, you're just allowing them to come to you. And this is a really interesting kind of chapter and moment, because this is where I find the settling really starts to happen, is where you're able to be in this cloudy mind and then you're just sort of experiencing the reality. So I experience the tastes in my mouth, the smells in the room or around me, the touch, sort of the temperature, the material, the cloth. So this is a way of just making contact with all of your senses. And it's almost like a bundle. Like you can, when you've done this enough times, toward the end of this moment of the meditation, you're almost experiencing like smells and tastes and sights. They're all just sort of things that are entering, and you're trying not to process them too much. So I spend that time experiencing the tactile. That's my next chapter. And then I shift to a body scan, that Pema Chodron body scan that I mentioned, where I start sort of focusing on the sensations from the bottom of my feet all the way through my legs and knees, up to my waist and torso and through my arms. And again, I'll walk you guys through this in the full guided meditation. But I let that scan happen, and I'm just experiencing what am I feeling, not trying to think too much about it, not trying to change anything, just noting it. So if there's like a big pain in my shoulder, I can just say, pain in my shoulder, and keep moving on and move up to my head, my neck. And then I scan right back down. And by that point in the meditation, I've sort of really landed in my seat. I've again felt the points of contact. I've started to experience the outside senses. I've felt the embodiment of my body, what my body truly feels and is sensing. My last piece there is then I do focus on the breath for a second, just feeling the rising and falling of my chest is where I feel my breath the most. Before finally moving to the metta practice, which is the loving kindness part of my meditation. And there I put my hand up to my chest. This is something that I found very, very healing. And I want to say maybe Tara Brach or some other teachers have mentioned sort of what it feels like to put your hand against your chest and your heart. It's very healing. And again, like I said, this was the part that was very uncomfortable for a year before it became like second nature. And I ask to myself, may I be blessed with happiness and health, with safety and protection. May I be blessed with love and lovingness, with belonging and contribution and helpfulness. May I be blessed with success and fulfillment, creative fulfillment and spiritual and romantic and existential fulfillment. May I be blessed with peace and freedom. May I be blessed with mindfulness and kindness and gratitude. And I wish that not only for myself, but for all beings everywhere. That's a moment that really helps me connect with intention. And finally, the last few moments, typically I have about five minutes left at the end of the meditation, I really sink into that don't know. At this point, I'm incredibly primed, I feel, in my meditation to be very connected with my body and the sensations. My intention feels very aligned, and then I move on to connecting with the source. You know, as Eckhart Tolle says, really, what is this? Don't know. Don't know. And that creates this sense of openness in the mind and unanswerable questions and connecting to the magnitude of life and existence and this universe and everything else. So that might feel like a very long meditation practice or a very storied and busy meditation practice. I will say, I do think there's a lot going on, and I think it's many chapters. This is the practice that has really come to work for me. I don't think it's for everyone. I've talked to my other spiritual friends, including my spiritual friend Floris, who I mentioned earlier, who said, wow, that's a lot. I just sit for 30 minutes and only do don't know or only do following of the breath. I think that's totally fine too. I find that I'm a little more engaged when there's a more active meditation. You can judge that however you like, but I find that it helps me touch on the greatest hits of all these different practices every day. And that's just something that sustains and works for me. And I think that sustainability, the fact that it's something you can do all the time and constantly is what matters the most. I've mentioned the benefits of meditation before, and I'll link to that to my other video where you can watch that. But that's a very long spiel, but hopefully that was something that was interesting. I got this question quite a lot, and I wanted to share, again, my practice, how my 30-minute sit breaks down. And again, I will record a full real-time 30-minute guided meditation for you guys to follow along if you want to try it. Thanks so much for all the love, for your subscription. Please subscribe and like, of course, if you like the video. I'm going to go back to, now that my coffee is fully cooled, I'm going to go back to my Letty Bermudez weird Geisha coffee from Colombia. But thanks so much for the support. I'll see you guys soon, and best of luck. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Bye.